AFM H3 and LTCnews.com.
The following program is paid for by Barbara Arnwine.
The topics, views, and opinions expressed on the air and via All Igniting Change with Barbara Arnwine, platforms by host Barbara Arnwine Esquire, guests, and supporters are their own and are independent of any organization, entity. Nothing said on the show or any of its platforms constitutes a client-attorney relationship or serves as legal advice counsel. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to Igniting Change, its platforms, or the show's host. It's time now for Igniting Change, a weekly provocative and empowering program where you, the listener, can ignite change. Now here's your host, Barbara Arnwine.
Get up, stand up.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Igniting Change. Oh, we have a great show for you today, and we are so excited about it. And we are glad that you're listening. Oh, good morning to all those wonderful West Coast listeners and all of those in the Midwest. And hey, Deep South, you know we love you. It is so good that you're all here for our show today. We have so much to cover. And I am always happy to bring up my mighty co-host, none other than the leader of the board of the Transformative Justice Coalition, one of our nation's boldest, baddest, most amazing strategists when it comes to racial justice. You know I'm talking about one of the nation's finest attorneys, none other than Daryl D. Jones. Hey, Daryl.
Hey, Barbara, it must be Tuesday, it must be noon Eastern Standard Time, because we're talking about igniting change. My goodness, Barbara, it seems as though we need to come on more than once a week because there's so much that happens from the last show to this show. But you know what? I am so excited, Barbara, that we have, you'll like this, Barbara. I'm so excited that we have a bold brother that's going to be on with us today that is unashamed, unapologetic, and will just tell it straight like it is. You know, Barbara, I'm just excited to get into it when we start talking about D.C., when we start talking about all the things that are happening from this current administration. I can think of no better person to have on to break it all down than our guest today, Barbara.
I mean, we are so blessed, everyone, to have one of the nation's most foremost attorneys, one of those leading thought leaders who actually takes the time to write and share his thoughts, who is one of the nation's. Okay. So he will be joining us shortly. We are, very delighted to have. When our guest joins, we'll introduce him. But in the interim, let's get this show on the road. Daryl, I thought it was fascinating to read, and I don't know if all our listeners are aware, that a judge today found that the D.C. held that the Los Angeles invasion by President Donald Trump with National Guard, Marines, etc., was unconstitutional. Daryl, what do you think about all that?
Well, Barbara, the thing is, there's nothing that was constitutional about it. For everybody that saw what was happening, I think that we all had the same feelings. Like, you haven't been invited in by the governor, and we know that if you're dealing with the National Guard and folks that are coming in, they've got to be invited in by the governor of the state. And Governor Newsom didn't do that. So, the finding of the court that, that President Trump's actions was unconstitutional, it's not surprising. But the question is, will he now correct the action and not do it in Chicago, which is on deck, Barbara?
Right, and he's been blocked. Well, I'm informed that our guest for the hour has joined. And I am so happy, everyone. Our show today is entitled Tell the Truth. A. Scott Bolden. That's right, A. Scott Bolden. Attorney Bolden's amazing leadership is what we're going to be talking about today. It's called, our show's total title is Tell the Truth, A. Scott Bolden's Challenge to Leadership. Oh, yes. Challenge to all these leaders all over the country, all here in the White House, everywhere, regarding not only the D.C. takeover, but the Smithsonian attack, voting rights with all this mid-decade redistricting, and so much more. Oh, we are so delighted that he is here to talk to us today, because we're going to talk about the threat of deploying this National Guard, as Daryl already mentioned, in other predominantly African-American Democratic cities. We're going to talk about the redistricting crisis. We're going to talk about the Congress. Where is it? Where is it to do its own bidding instead of the bidding of this president? We're going to talk about the attack on Black history. And are you ready? Are you getting ready for the 2016 midterm elections? We're going to talk about all these things, because obviously our enemies are. A. Scott Bolden is the powerful voice at the intersection of race, law, and politics. He is a nationally acclaimed attorney and partner at a large international law firm. He's a News Nation contributor. Oh, if you have seen him, he is tearing it up on News Nation. He doesn't flinch for a moment. He's a former New York State prosecutor and former chair of the D.C. Democratic Party. He was inducted into the Washington Bar Association Hall of Fame, was the recipient of his 2021 Ollie Mae Cooper Award, was named one of the 100 most influential lawyers in law and business by Savoy Magazine and the American Business Journals. Did you hear that, folks? 2 journals. And he was also Rainmaker of the Year, found to be the Rainmaker of the Year by the Minority Corporate Counsel Association. This year he was given the 2025 Tay Lifetime Achievement Award. You'll regularly see Scott on News Nation or other networks sharing his expert analysis and passionate insights on high-profile cases, hot-button issues such as civil rights, police reform, voting rights, and national policy. It is our honor to welcome back to the mighty igniting change none other than one of our nation's top attorneys, A. Scott Bolden. Hey, Scott.
Hey, how are you doing? Best introduction I've ever had, and I don't know where you get your energy, but I love it. I wish I had it. No question.
We are beyond delighted. We know how busy you are. Woo! Your clients are, and so many other things that just keep you busy. So we are so happy that you have taken the time today to be here. The first thing I want you to do as we start this interview, can you just tell us a little bit about your background? Because, people, they see these amazing figures, they're powerful, they're sitting there, but none of us just emerge that way. We all evolve that way. So tell people, about where you were born, your amazing parents. Every time I read about your mom, your dad, I'm just so overcome. And then I want you to tell us about how you started off in law and how in the world did you end up in Washington, D.C.? So we got a lot to cover.
That's a lot to cover, Barbara. But, I was born, I say this all the time, I was born into the race game. I grew up in Joliet, Illinois. My parents were civil rights activists. One of two of the many lieutenants around the country who led civil rights movements at the local level in small towns, medium-sized towns. They took the call up from Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X and others, the real unsung heroes of the civil rights movement. We ought to do a show on all those in local communities around the country that made a difference. And so being the child of a lawyer and a judge and who's in the civil rights movement, my parents have pictures. I have pictures of me being 3 years old, sitting in a picket line or being carried in a picket line with a sign and a piece of watermelon, because that's the only thing I would be. That's the only way they could get me to be quiet or to cooperate or what have you. But they desegregated a lot of institutions in Joliet and Chicago and elsewhere around the country. My father was the head of the NAACP in Joliet, Illinois, and was very active at the state level with the organization. There was no doubt I was going to be a lawyer because I grew up watching my father, who was a brilliant orator and brilliant lawyer, try cases all around the country. All around the state of Illinois. And in the 60s, I've been to or would go with him to jails and prisons to see his clients, to get his clients released. And I would sit in the front row of courtrooms where very often he and I were the only black people in the courthouse or in the courtroom as he tried cases. And so for me, as an 8-year-old, not only the dichotomy of color, but more importantly, in places below the Mason-Dixon line in the state of Illinois, like Collinsville, there were no place for he and I to stay if he went to defend a young black man who either killed or shot or robbed someone that did not have melanin in their skin, someone that was white and defendant was black. I distinctly remember growing up and really understanding the difference between the races, and more importantly, my father teaching me and my brother and sister that we could not hate white folks who were our oppressors, and if we did, we were no better than them. And so that's quite a balance, if you will, based on what I was seeing through my eyes and what was happening in the 60s when I was born and into the 70s and 80s. And so it left a real significant mark on my view of the race and racism and the law. And as a result, I went to Howard's Law School. I went to Morehouse undergrad, 2 great historical black institutions and training grounds for young black men, and then became a prosecutor in New York for about 5 years. Was on the prosecution side, but very friendly with Alton Maddox and C. Vernon Mason, who were civil rights champions and criminal defense champions at a time when Al Sharpton was shutting down the Brooklyn Bridge, at a time the Central Park 5 was prosecuted out of Trial Bureau 40, where I was a young prosecutor. So I knew those prosecutors, and I'll say this to this day, those young prosecutors in that office who prosecuted the Central Park 5 were honest as the day is long, but were driven by Linda Fahrenstein and others higher ups in the office to placate the police and to get this done with these young people. And so I'm not letting them off the hook by any means, but I work with them every day, and that case was just so politically driven that there was no doubt they were going to prosecute this case. And thank goodness Donald Trump's call for the death penalty was just his call for the death penalty, because all 5 were later exonerated. And a great example of why Donald Trump and the death penalty and pouring police into our communities is not the answer.
My. So why did you move from New York to D.C.? You're up there in what everybody considers, the city. But you came to D.C. What motivated you? Huh?
It's always a woman. I moved from New York to D.C. over a woman.
Oh, no. Yeah,
my first wife worked in the Bush, worked for Jack Kemp over at HUD in the 90s, early 90s, and we were married, and we had a long-distance relationship. And so when my commitment of 4 or 5 years was up in New York. I moved here to Washington. Was going to be a federal prosecutor in the Civil Rights Division. That certainly didn't pan out. And, I was unemployed for 6 months, Barbara. I washed cars.